Hello, folks, and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if that's something you want to listen to on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, you got to hit that subscribe button, because if you do, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is one right now, and we are over on the A to Z Sports Tennessee Vols YouTube channel. Go there, hit the subscribe button, hit that little notification bell, because then you'll be notified when we go live. And just like the folks that are watching us right now, you can be a part of the show. You can comment. You can hang out. We love going back and forth with the folks in the comments. It's the absolute best. So go do that too. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, at Big Orange Pod. If you want to follow the just Tennessee content strictly, A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. I think that's pretty much it. Still getting used to this new music. But, hey.
It's different. Right. Yeah.
Maybe I need to get a hold of the Buffalo Killers and bring our old theme song back.
They'd probably be like, sure, no problem.
They probably would be.
Yeah.
They are not a super famous band, but no offense to them. All right. Let's get down to it, Zach. Tennessee beats the Florida Gators. And as well, I would say, if you are watching, as you can tell, Tennessee beat the Florida Gators. Zach bringing back the hat for another week. What's up, man?
Yeah. We don't get to enjoy too many of these, obviously, over the years. It's the third win since 2004, so I don't care how it looked. I don't care how long it took, what it took. A win against Florida is a win against Florida, and you don't ever take those for granted. I hope there's 5 more in a row of them, and I will celebrate them all just the same.
Yes, I mean, we were talking for Alabama. You get the elephant hat. You can be who had the mascots that carried them around during the 22 season after every game.
Was it Spraggins? Maybe
I think it was Spraggins.
Yeah.
So hey, he's still on the team.
Yeah, I did. I saw him stomping on the deflated gator after the game.
Good.
That was nice. It was fun. I mean, that's what I don't know. Not to get too far into this real quick, but I don't know if you saw the Penn State game where the players were going to go plant the flag at midfield after they won, and James Franklin stopped them. Which I think that was a closer game.
Lame.
I kind of understood it in that moment, like not really the place, but Tennessee, Florida, I feel like anything goes, no matter how good, how bad you are. That's what college rivalries are about. Embrace it, enjoy it. And Florida would be doing the same thing if it was the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. Because my philosophy always is you can do all that stuff. It's, there is a certain point where you cross a line, but planting a flag in midfield is not it. And the only thing is that when you lose, you got to expect the same exact thing back. It's kind of like with Oklahoma this year. They came in 2015, and they were, where it crosses the line, they were flipping people off in the crowd. Okay, you cross the line there. Don't do that. That's not great. But I think they did the planting the flag, parading around. Hey, you beat us. You came in. And so that's what you get to do. So it's all fair game there. So
yeah, for sure. And I saw some more flag planting stuff out there in Texas with Texas Oklahoma through a Baker Mayfield jersey this week. So that's another example of it. Kind of going on there.
When it's that bitter and that much of an old rivalry, you have to do stuff like that. And frankly, Tennessee finally getting some back against Florida here. We deserve every bit of doing anything like that in this game.
Sure.
That is for sure. And we're going to talk about all of it on today's show, no doubt. I mean, that's what it's going to be. And then it's going to be an Alabama preview. You can tell from the title of the show, we're going to talk about Tennessee's offense and what they got to do to get this thing back on the tracks, to get it rolling in the correct direction, because you saw flashes of it in that second half. How can they make that happen against Alabama? We'll talk about it all right after I tell you about Zen Sports. Football is back. What better way to bet on the big games than with Zen Sports? When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to a $100 no-danger first wager. If your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $100. And for football season, Zen Sports is launching a revamped betting platform for college football and the NFL. I have taken a look at it. It is a little spiffier than it was before. And then Zen Sports offers a one-of-a-kind VIP rewards program. If you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, and even sports book bonuses. Go to zensports.com/VIP to check that out. They even have daily super boosts that are 16% over their Tennessee competitors. Pretty nice deal there. So what are you waiting for? Start betting with Zen Sports, where you receive true odds on all parlays and an enhanced user experience for all. Get going and download the app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports betting just got better. On the game day show with Crompton says that we need to have Zen Sports have a prop bet on how quickly I can read the disclaimer here. I don't know the time period, but here it is. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. No danger, wager limited. Plus 500 odds to qualify. Boosted odds are derived from equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Zen Sports.
Do you think you could do it without the script?
Some of it. It's that line. It's that line in there. That's the boosted odds are derived from equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. It's kind of wordy and like, yeah, I don't know if I could do that. But the gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. I mean, I can rip that off. I just did. So, yeah. And definitely do that if you do have a gambling problem. All right. Tennessee finally beats the Florida Gators, as you said, for the third time in 20 years. As depressing as that might be, it is the case. And Josh Heupel is now the only coach since Fulmer did not do this, since Majors, to win twice in a row at home against the Gators. Florida beat them in consecutive seasons. Majors beat them in 90 and 92. And I don't care what form Florida is in. They can be FCS level competition, right? It's kind of how I feel about Vandy in most sports. Vandy stinks at most sports, but beating them is still so gratifying because it's Vandy, you know? And with Florida, it would be the same thing. It's gratifying. I don't care if they stink absolutely out loud. It's really nice. Obviously, you watched this game, Zach, and we texted all the way through it in our group chat. And we don't have to talk about anything that was said in there. I don't think it's relevant, and I don't think we need to mention that at all. But
we had a lot of faith the whole game.
Yeah, 100%. I never thought for 1 second that Tennessee was losing this game. Definitely not. But how did you feel on Saturday, Zach?
I mean, what a range of emotions. You go into that game coming off of that Arkansas loss and obviously the Oklahoma win the week before where they only scored 25 points. And you really didn't know what to expect, and it didn't take long. I mean, that first drive, it looked like, okay, Tennessee's finding their rhythm, and then you have the botched snap, they fumble, and it's like, okay, this is really happening. As you get through the first half, and it's 3-0 at halftime again, it's like this is the exact same game. I mean, they can't consistently move the ball. They're committing penalties. The offensive line's holding every time there's a big play, it seems like. They just could not get anything going. Luckily, Florida was, they were shooting themselves in the foot at times, and Tennessee made some big plays on defense to keep them from scoring. They had a terrible fumble at the goal line that initially I did not think was going to be a fumble at all. It was a very fortunate break for Tennessee. And they just, I think the resiliency of this team, though comes through. You got to look for some positives anytime you come out of a win. And, they're down 10-0 in the second half. And in my thought process was this team cannot erase a 10-point deficit. Like, they can't play from behind and catch up like this. And then, Dylan Sampson, who feels like he's becoming Josh Heupel's version of Jawan Jennings, just kind of puts the team on his back and scores 3 touchdowns in the second half and in overtime there to win the game. They just kept at it. They never let the mistakes or the frustration get the best of them. There wasn't any finger pointing, anything like that. And Florida, there at the end, I really thought Tennessee was going to make a stand there, and that game wasn't going to go to overtime. And then I think we all kind of thought, okay, they're going to go for 2 and get it, and Tennessee's going to come up short because that's just the way Tennessee would lose a Florida game. It just had that feel to it. I thought Billy Napier deciding to kick the extra point there was, that worked in Tennessee's favor because at that point they had so much momentum. I think that, if they run a good play there, they could score, take the lead, and really put the pressure on Tennessee to go down and try to kick a field goal. And kicking that extra point and then winning the coin toss. As soon as they won the coin toss, I started feeling pretty good about it in overtime because you always want to be on defense second. You get that extra possession, knowing that if you need a touchdown, you can go for it on fourth down. Luckily for Tennessee, it didn't come to that because the way the defense played. And coming out of that game, you win 23-17 in overtime. I mean, to me, it wasn't the most well played game, but we used to see games like that all the time. I mean, a lot of people reference the 1998 Tennessee Florida game. Obviously, a little bit different teams in that game, but there wasn't a lot of scoring in that game either. And you just have to make the plays when they come your way. And to me, it felt like an instant classic in this series. But the mood around the game after is just so much negativity about the offense and the offense not moving the ball. It's like, well, the defense played lights out for the most part, and they found a way to win. And against Florida, that's all you want. I don't care. Like I said at the beginning, I don't care how it looks when it comes to Florida. You just have to find a way to win that game. And too many years, pretty good Tennessee teams have found a way to lose that game. And this was a game that really, the way it was played for most of the night, Florida probably, deserved to win if you're just looking at it objectively and who played better for most of the first part of the game, kind of like that Ole Miss LSU game that LSU pulled out at the end later Saturday night. It was like they flipped the script finally, where we've seen Tennessee be on that side of it so many times, and this time they were finally able to be the one that they found the way to win. So to me, there's a lot of positives. Obviously, a lot of work that there needs to be done. I don't think the offense is as bad as it looks. They're just not. They're just off for whatever reason. Not everybody's on the same page. There were plays to be made. There were throws to be made. There were catches to be made that could have put that game out of reach for Tennessee, and they just didn't execute. So I know the play calling, we complained about some of that. I complained about it plenty in real time on Saturday night, but some of that stuff was working. It just wasn't executed on the field. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to a lot of times is execution.
Yeah, I never feel fully qualified to comment on play calling because obviously I've never been a football coach. And I kind of hate that line of thinking where it's like, you can't comment on anything unless you've been a football coach or what. You can learn a lot about football play calling without being a coach. But I just, that's not my forte. And where I'm kind of convinced that the play calling in this game was not that bad was talking to Crompton in the post game. And actually, Daniel brings up in the comments, says Crompton was very reserved in post game. I'm shocked. Nico is struggling. They've got to do things to help him out and get him going. But Crompton really kind of put a good deal of it on Nico. And I think a narrative coming out of this game in a general sense has been that Halsey and Heupel brought it a lot better in this Florida game, and gave Nico chances. And frankly, he didn't hit some throws that he had to hit. I mean, you're talking, if you hit 2 of those 3 bombs, Tennessee essentially blows Florida out of this game. And there, am I thinking correctly? It was 3 missed. There was 1 to Squirrel, 2 to Nimrod that were big down the field. Although one to Nimrod was on that final drive. I'd have to.
Yeah, I know there was the one to Nimrod looked like pass interference might be in play on that one. Also, kind of looked like should have been caught, and then Squirrel as well. So there was a couple there to those.
But I have been ranting about, like, why do they not go to the edges more? Why is it just inside zone, inside zone, inside zone? Like, that's all that they've been doing. And they did more of it. There was a lot of inside zone, let's be clear. But they had a little more creativity in this game. I loved something that Crompton brought up that I would love to see. And I wanted to get more into the offense a little bit later because the defense, more than anybody, deserves their jewels here. But he almost said that Tennessee should just essentially run a triple option bring in Bishop and Sampson, and then use Nico's legs, and do what Vanderbilt's doing right now. Pavia is getting the ball way downfield is not his strength, but the staff there is playing to Pavia's strength, and they're essentially running triple. They're running the military school strategy, and they're beating Alabama. I mean, what are you going to say about it? And so, hey, whatever it is, it has to work. But let's talk about the defense first, because that's who won you this game. Point blank, period. When they got down into the red zone, how many times did Florida get into the red zone? I heard the stat. Was it 6 times? They came out with 2 touchdowns and a field goal. And the fact that that was the result that you came out with, and in that first half where they were down there kind of constantly, you held them to 3 points. What an accomplishment. And yeah, they gave up that big pass right at the end, but they flipped right around and, bowed up their back and not just made the stop, but drove Florida out of field goal range. And just really, they were the difference maker from front to back in this game. And Tim Banks, he has not been perfect here, but so much credit. When you look at specifically this defensive backfield, we had a segment on the show. We pulled it out as a clip where we talked about how the defensive backs were getting sort of raked over the coals before we ever even saw them truly tested. I think they've been tested now. And they have showed that they are a leap and a bound better than in past years. Jamad McCoy is a dog. Boo Carter was out there making plays all over the place. I mean, you have a set of dudes that are better than you've had in the past, then your defensive line is full of dogs. Now, I hate Keenan Peely is out for the season. Heupel announced that today. Pains me. Truly, I mean, Heupel called it heartbreaking. It really is, because, great dude who came back for his 94th season in college. And I just absolutely hate that for him. Makes me ill. But now your chances for Arian Carter and other guys to step up, here you go. It's time for the young gun to do it. And Arian Carter, huge interception in that game. I mean, there's just guys stepping up all over the field on the defensive side of the ball. Now, can you get that from your offense? That's the key to putting it all together. But I just think you got to emphasize the defense first in this one, because they're ultimately, yeah, you scored 23 points. You scored 17 and a half. Finally, that was great. But they were the ones that kept you in this game, and that cannot be looked over.
Yeah, and I thought after the game, Heupel kind of approached that perfectly. You could tell he was frustrated with the offense. I mean, right off the bat, if you watched his demeanor, you almost felt like Tennessee lost the game. But at the same time, he pointed out, he's like, in no time has this ever been, offense versus defense. Like, we got to go out there and find a way to be +1 on the scoreboard. And it's a bit cliche, but that is the goal at the end of the day. And Heupel's calling card has been the offense, but you just got to go find a way to win the game ultimately. And it's a team game. And I think that's the way Heupel's coaching this team. I think he kind of hates the fact that he's just labeled as an offensive guy. I think he views himself as a football coach, football guy above all else. And I think that's showing in the way that he's building this program. So often you've seen, that was always the thing about those old Big 12 offenses that ran this style of offense, was there was no defense played at all. And early on, that was a little bit of the problem with Tennessee in 2021 and even in 2022 when they went 11-2. They're in these shootouts a couple of times, like with the Alabama game. And he promised and he told people that he wanted to have an elite defense, and they've built towards that. They've put just as much effort into that side of the ball as they have the offensive side of the ball, and it's paying off now when carrying the team at times. I mean, it was the offense carrying the team those first couple of years, and these last 2 years, it's been the defense that's won some big games. A year ago today, I believe it was the Texas A&M game where they won that game for them, essentially. So these aren't bad things. I think, you go from Hendon Hooker, who was in his second year in that offense in 2022 and then just had it figured out, and he was the guy. I mean, he knew exactly what to do. He was in lockstep with Jalen Hyatt and Ramel Keaton. It just clicked. And then last season, we know what Joe Milton was. Still, you find a way to win 9 games with that guy and get him drafted by an NFL team, which probably, he didn't really show enough besides the ability to throw the ball really far to be drafted. And you come in this season with Nico, he's what, 5-1, 6-1 through his first however many career starts, seven
6-1 through 7 starts. Yep.
He's lost one game. Ultimately, that's the only stat that really matters. But he hasn't had that year of experience like Hooker did. He didn't have that mentor either. I mean, Joe Milton, he was trying to figure out how to run this offense, quite honestly, the past several years. I don't know how much information, was getting passed to Nico that could be like a cheat code type deal. So, I mean, he's going to get better. This is his first year starting. He's going to be here in 2025 and, maybe 2026. Who knows how it plays out? Hopefully he's not. Hopefully he takes off and he can go to the NFL and you'll be on to the next guy. But I think that's just, if you're expecting this 2022 offense, you've got to look at everything that went into that. You had the whole year. You had, we talked last week, you had Alex Golish there. So the play calling, the way they were attacking opposing defenses was a little bit different. All those things were factors. So you can't put it all on Nico, that he's not living up to the hype when he's 6-1 as a starter. And he's just now seeing some of this stuff for the first time. Some of these defensive looks, I guarantee you, especially over the last 3 weeks, it's the first time in his football career he's probably ever seen anything like that. And he's going to have to figure it out. And he will. I think he will. I think he's a good quarterback. I bet if you went back and looked at Hendon Hooker's game film from Virginia Tech, where he was not a star player, you're probably going to see some similar games as to what Nico's had these past few weeks. So I think you got to keep it all in context and not make a hot take after a couple of bad weeks of offensive performances from Tennessee.
Well, I think you look at Quinn Ewers right now. He's probably the best quarterback in America, and he looked pretty similar to what you're getting from Nico right now at the beginning of his time at Texas, and he's just had that time. But I said this to Crompton on Saturday during the post game. The tough part of all of this is that you play Alabama next week. You don't play Alabama next year. Like that's the tough part. You only have the time horizon that you have before you have to play a top 10 team in Alabama. Now Alabama's having their own problems. We're going to talk about all of that. They should have lost to South Carolina this weekend. But I think I agree with you. And Crompton on that show was a little more defeatist. He was just sort of like, well, Nico stinks right now, so that's what you have to face in the mirror. And
that's fair. I mean, look, right now, I wouldn't say he stinks totally. He hasn't played his best at all.
Yes.
I've seen way worse performances. I watched Nate Peterman play quarterback at Florida.
Exactly.
And Crompton knows that as well as anyone. Like, he went through some tough times until Kiffin, got to town.
Exactly. He took a big step forward when Kiffin came in, and that was no coincidence. And I think with Nico, the more time he has, he's just going to get better. The talent is all there. He's incredibly slippery running the ball, just uber athletic. He's just a lean, mean machine as far as that goes. And he just has to learn how to harness it. And the kid's just 20 years old. Like, he just has to get that experience under his belt. And he will. Now, Caleb in the comments, he says, why are Campbell and Hurd so bad this season? The blind side is a problem. So to address this is a huge piece to me in Nico's development. Heupel brought it up in the post game. The post game was actually kind of, I don't want to say funny. Funny's not the right word, because Heupel was not celebrating in that post game. He was kind of apoplectic about the offense, actually. And he said, as far as the offense goes, if it's not, Nico missing the pass, it's the wide receivers not making the catch, or it's the offensive line not protecting, everybody gets their turn. He said something along those lines. And it is, I think this offensive line with Hurd, I think is another guy going through growing pains. He showed, especially in the second half of that game, I hate this, another overused term, but it's true. He flashed. He had some moments where you went, okay, hey, that's something right there that you could, you can bank on a little bit. That's nice. But then he had some moments where he got his butt whooped at the same time. And the blind side is a problem. And I think in some sense it has Nico, feeling ghost. The fact that he is playing far better outside the pocket than he is in is all you need to know as far as that goes, I think, because he is just feeling like, okay, I got to get out of here. and he's just feeling that pressure, and it's affecting the way that he's going to develop, the way that he plays in a game. And so they roll him out. They did more of that. Not only did they try to run to the edges a little bit more, but they rolled Nico out more, and he looks so much more comfortable in that setting. And that's great. That's why I don't take a huge, I'm not raking Halsey over the coals this week, because I think they did do some things. They did try to adapt some this week, and Nico just didn't deliver. Specifically on those deep shots. Again, if he hits one or two of those, it's a different ball game. But I just think that it's sort of a product of the entire thing. And if I'm blaming anybody in terms of, if I have to rank who I'm blaming with this offense, it is Nico number one. He has to make those throws. Then it's the offensive line. They have played horrifically. And then the receivers, especially in this game, the receivers were open some. I mean, they had their spots, and they finally were able to spring open some. And whatever's happening where they're just not doing as many of the switch releases, and they're not open as much as they were with Jalen Hyatt. Maybe it's just Jalen Hyatt's special talent. That stuff isn't happening as much, but it did happen in this Florida game, period. And they didn't take advantage like they should have. And I kind of blame it all on a whole. It is not just Nico. It is not just the offensive line. It's sort of everybody all stinking together, unfortunately. But then they showed some pride in that second half. 17 points in a half. Dylan Sampson is a 100% grade A certified dog. And so now use all of this knowledge that you have, continue to make Nico better, and do the things that you have to do to just continue building on what you got in that second half against Florida.
Yeah, I think if the offensive line plays better, I think with Nico, like you said, he's probably seen some ghosts there at times, and that's tough for a 20-year-old redshirt freshman quarterback when you don't feel like your protection is there, and he's not feeling it that well. I think he can maneuver in the pocket a little bit better. I think Joel Klatt put it perfect, and he said it again this week. Like, Nico's, you can see it. Like, you can see the talent.
Yeah.
It's just he's like just a tick too late to try to leave the pocket, to step up, to just let it fly when he sees the guy open, when he anticipates, where it's going to be, where the throw needs to go. He's just holding on to the ball just a little too long. And I think that's part of that is he doesn't want to make a mistake. Obviously, you want to take care of the football, but I think you just got to go out there with a Brett Favre, Baker Mayfield type of mentality and just let it loose. And you're going to have some turnovers, but you're going to hit on some big plays too. And typically, the way Tennessee's offense works, they don't usually have to throw the ball in the super tight windows. Though I think Nico I think it was the first half, he made a real nice throw into a tight window. I mean, it was just that moment where you're like, there it is. We've seen a couple of those moments from him this season. So I think if you get the offensive line playing better, and I think with Hurd and Campbell, they're good players. I think you're seeing probably some conditioning stuff. Hurd's missed time, with the ankle a couple of weeks, and he had just got into this offense in the spring. Campbell, I don't know how much he's practicing. It seems like he's managing this knee deal, and he's going to have to keep managing it all season. So I don't know what his conditioning level is. And, in this offense, that's especially important because the tempo that they play with, even when they're not moving the ball all the way down the field, they're still playing pretty quick. And maybe you'll see them settle in a little bit. Like you said, you saw some moments there where it's like, okay, we see how good they can be, but it's got to be consistent. And Nico's got to feel comfortable in that. And I think with the receivers, you have seen them get open at times. I don't understand. I don't understand not playing Mike Matthews more. I think the kid looks like a legit playmaker, and he's super talented.
Yeah.
He's the type of guy that you think is going to be an early round draft pick, first, second round type pick. I mean, he's a 5-star receiver. Those are the guys that you expect to get drafted. And everything you've heard about the kid is that he's super mature, and he has a real eager mentality to go out and perform and produce. We've seen him in just limited moments. Find a way to get him the ball. I think Chris Brazzell is another one of your big playmakers where you kind of saw some of that at times where there were plays to be made. Get the ball to him. I know you love Brew McCoy and Squirrel White and these guys, but I think those are your and they're good players. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I think like Matthews and Brazel, those can be your difference makers. Thornton can stretch the field. He seems to be able to have a good rapport there with Nico so far. I would like to see more Brazel, Matthews, and Thornton. I think moving forward at the wide receiver, see them getting more reps. That would be nice. I mean, Nimrod, for example, had a tough game, and he's had some good moments. He's played well last season at times, but he didn't have the best game on Saturday night, and you just wonder on some of the personnel decisions there. But Tennessee's seeing practices all week. They're seeing these guys what they do Monday through Saturday. We're just seeing them for 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. But those are the things that kind of jump off the screen to me is just get those guys more involved and get these tackles settled in, get conditioning, whatever it is. If you can get them settled in and Nico feels more comfortable, I think this offense could click really fast. I mean, I think they could flip a switch and get there quick. Like they're not super far away at all. It's not like the scheme's totally not working. I know that's kind of been a debate, like all defenses have finally figured it out. No, I don't think this is anything totally different that they're showing Tennessee. I mean, Heupel said they've seen some of this before. This offense it's been around a while. The reason Tennessee's worked so well at times is because of that chemistry, because of the ability to be on the same page. When you're not, this is what you get, just like with any offense, to be honest.
There's a ton. I could not agree more on Mike Matthews, and maybe it's Craig here in the comments. Maybe he has a point. He said Matthews might be behind. Wasn't he injured early? I believe he was. But if he gets to a point where you could use him, you got to use him because you look on your own team. Boo Carter is out there making plays. He had a great game against Florida, true freshman. Look at DJ Lagway for Florida. He nearly beat you, and he's a true freshman. Get this kid out there and let him show. And you can look across football. Jeremiah Smith, Williams with Alabama, the kid Ryan Wingo for Texas, who Ryan Wingo, Tennessee really recruited hard.
And everybody's like, well, Mike Matthews isn't Ryan Williams. I'm like, well, maybe he's not. Ryan Williams looks like a freak stud athlete. That,
yeah.
Generational type guy. But who knows? Like, we just haven't seen them enough in those situations to really know what his ceiling is.
Yeah, there's so many things that you could do in this case and improve. And to your point there, it does feel like there's just 1, 2, 3 things they could do outside of offensive line play. I mean, period, the offensive line has to play better. That's a given across the board. That's a non-starter. There is not a way this offense can succeed without them playing well. So I almost leave that one to the side. Offensive line has to play well. But it just seems like after that, there's just like a couple things they could do, and it'll just click into place. It almost feels like in that Florida game, if they just hit that long ball, and suddenly it's a brand new game where you're beating Florida much more comprehensively than you were. And as you know, Mr. Jones is saying it here. Nico needs to run, and he needs to run with a purpose. He needs to keep the ball on the RPOs and actually make the defense have to consider that. If you never keep it, then it's never gonna be a threat. And so I looked specifically at that play where he fumbled the ball. I think he was trying to keep it on that play.
So. That's what it looked like.
And if he did, that was about to be a big play. Mm-hmm. There was tons of grass in front of him there. And so,
but again, he held on to it for just a
exactly
like 1/10 of a second too long.
And so, I mean, that's almost one of those things where it's just practice makes perfect. And again, you look at Hooker, he ran those so nicely. And it's almost an art form where you have to make it, if you're going to keep it, you have to make it look realistic, and it had, so that you can actually make the defense believe you might hand it off. Like, there's a lot to it. And they just screwed it up. But he has to start keeping it there. As I was just saying, I love that idea from Crompton. Run the triple option. Get 2 running backs in there. Get a freaking fullback in there. I don't care what you got to do. They used Jackson Moy as a fullback in that weird 4th down play at Tennessee's own 11. I mean, and that could be a podcast in itself, whatever the psyche was going on with Heupel there. A wild choice. I think he was afraid of making the defense continue to work. Yeah. And
You
And
can't
it
expect the
was
defense to shut out an SEC team for 60
exactly.
minutes. Like, they got to get a break.
It was a desperation move, is what it was. And I think Heupel was asked about it. He didn't say exactly that, but it's kind of what he said.
He said, like, we just felt like we had to get something going.
Yeah, and it
we
did.
felt the same.
Yeah, I mean, we all thought that he was making an absolutely nutty decision, but it worked. It's only stupid if it doesn't work. It was one of those.
Yes.
And so, but if Nico can run more, get more comfortable, hit those long balls, and the wide receivers just keep progressing. Offensive line, bow up, get better. Just those few things, it'll click into place. Can it click into place against Alabama? I think so. Alabama's defense has not showed anything that makes me believe that they're any more special than anybody else you've played. I mean, they're better than NC State and Kent State, maybe. But, I think Florida put up a really admirable effort. And look, Alabama's gotten roasted by Vandy in South Carolina. Like, specifically, I think with Vandy, it was sort of that triple option that threw them through a loop. So I think if you did that, Alabama would probably be a little more prepared for it now. But you mix that in with everything else that Tennessee could do, and I think you have real weapons that could give Alabama some serious problems here. You got to make the plays. When the plays present themselves, you have to do. And there was a couple of plays I watched where Nico went for a harder throw than he needed to, and he could have just gone to the check down, and the check down would have been probably a first down. Like, you have to learn to be okay with the conservative play like that. There's just those, like I said, a few things.
It's just the game's
just hone in.
It's just got to slow down for Nico.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Like, the game's going a little fast for him right now, and that's fine. Like, I think every quarterback goes through that at some point. There's a few special guys every now and then as true freshmen or redshirt freshmen just get it. Everybody's different. I don't think it has to be one way or the other. We've seen guys not get it till later on. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't play until he's a redshirt junior at LSU. I mean, it takes time. It's a big jump from high school competition where you're playing against maybe a couple of guys that are going to be D1 players to when all of a sudden everybody, you're playing against future NFL guys week in and week out in the SEC. It takes some time to adjust to that. And I know that's sounds like a cop out. And eventually Nico does have to do it. Like, he only gets to go in that excuse for so long. By the end of this season, he's going to practically be, almost a junior, really, in a sense. He'll be finishing up his second year. So he does have to get it. But for now, like, I'm just, it's hard. I just can't come down too hard on him yet. And this was always going to be the risk of playing a quarterback this young. It was the only thing about Heupel's strategy there with going straight from Milton to Nico that was like, I don't know, like the situation that Arch Manning's in at Texas, I feel like that's a much better situation for quarterbacks. And good on Manning for staying down there. He doesn't have to be the guy until he's a redshirt sophomore. And he's had some chances because of Quinn Ewers' injury history, but it's always going to be a better situation for a quarterback when you're not expected to be the guy as a 19 or 20-year-old. Sometimes it works out, but I think it's always, you're just going to get better and better and better. And these guys aren't NFL caliber at 20 years old yet. You gotta keep developing, and that's the path Nico's on right now. So it's a lot of the hype that was put on him by the national media, I think, really just created these expectations that were never going to be reachable and never going to be fair. And you're like, Jameis Winston did it as a redshirt freshman, or Trevor Lawrence. It's just like, you don't have to take that path to be an elite player. You don't. It can take some time, and that's okay. And obviously it is a little bit here for Nico.
It was us too. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah,
I was hyping him through the roof. Because it certainly is. It's still true to me that he has the pieces to be elite. He just has to get there. And I thought he might already be there previously, and it's clear that he's not. I mean, you just saw in those first sort of few snoozer games that Tennessee played through, you just went, oh, this kid has already got this thing locked up. And obviously when the rubber really met the road, he didn't. But I think the potential is still there and more. You just got to unlock it. And so the game will continue to slow down for him. I think he'll get better, continue to process. And then I think there's things that Heupel and Halsey can continue to do to play to his strengths and play to his strengths, play the receiver strengths, play to the offensive line strengths, like what they did in that second half where they rolled Nico out more. He's more comfortable not in the pocket, and they're more comfortable blocking that way.
And he makes some insane throws on the move across his body. I mean, that's like the one to Nimrod that was just out of his reach, or it might have been interference. I think that was kind of across his body where he was rolling out and kind of had to come back. I mean, those are elite level throws, even though they didn't hit him. Just the ability to put that ball pretty much where it needed to be is impressive.
It is. And so I think he'll get there, and that's going to be the key to unlocking the offense, is just those pieces falling into place. Can they do it? And I think, given Heupel's track record, that they will. Now, with that said, this is the week where it all has to come together, because 23 points isn't going to win you this football game against Alabama. I'm sorry to say, it's just not. I think Alabama has a formidable enough team where it's going to have to be 30 plus in this one to win. And obviously this is, I don't want to say this game is your season, but you win this one and you're as on easy street as you could probably get to the playoff. Like it's not gonna get easier than if you can get through Alabama with this win, because then you could lose to Georgia and still.
And Kentucky is not going to be.
Oh, Kentucky's easy. Not going to roll over. Mississippi State's not going to roll over. Mississippi State didn't roll over against Georgia.
And that's another one of those games. We'll get there when we get there later on in the season. But that's one of those games where they're very familiar with how Josh Heupel operates his offense, and those are the games that are giving Heupel some trouble.
And Vandy, I'm sorry, Vandy beat Alabama already, and so but as I said, you would be in as good a position as you could possibly hope for, because the talking points that we had preseason was, if you can get to Alabama undefeated, you can lose to Alabama and Georgia. And I think the same is true if you could lose to Arkansas and Georgia, and you're going to make the playoff, because you'll have beaten enough teams and have enough to be probably 6 to 9 somewhere in there in the playoff. And like this is as important of a game as Heupel will ever coach in his career. And it just so happens to be, one of the most classic matchups in all of college football. And now let's talk about it, Zach. Give a little preview and prediction for the folks for Alabama. If you can't tell, I might be a little bit nervous about this one, but let's discuss it right after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some have stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. All righty. So, Zach, I don't know if you watched Alabama's game against South Carolina. They should have lost. If South Carolina had a half-competent football coach, they would have won. No offense to Shane Beamer, but also offense to Shane Beamer. He's not good, and he never has been, and he's not going to be. Kind of like Billy Napier. He's a little bit Sunbelt Billy. Sometimes he can put together a formidable performance, but at the end of the day, you got what you got. At the same day, and then the week before they lost to Vanderbilt. There is 100% a way for Tennessee to win this game. The path is there. Can Tennessee actually do it?
Man, I mean, if the offense starts clicking like we say it could, then, sure, absolutely. If Tennessee had played really well against Florida and hit on some of those big plays, I think we'd all feel a lot different about this game. But even then, I don't think South Carolina's a great team. I think obviously there's some parity in the SEC at this point. I think that's fair to say. these games that used to just be blowout games, they just aren't anymore. I mean, you look at Georgia. I still think Georgia's a good team, but you have kind of Mississippi State's got you in a game. You barely beat Kentucky. You lose to Alabama, who then loses to Vanderbilt. I mean, there's Ole Miss losing to Kentucky, and it's just all over the place right now. So it almost feels like a NFL type thing where it's like any given Saturday, just depends what team shows up. So I mean, I certainly think Tennessee has the capability of beating this team, especially without Nick Saban there. But Alabama's just got a couple of playmakers that have shown they can do it in some big games this season. They did it against Georgia with Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams. I mean, as good as Jermod McCoy is, if you get the ball out to Ryan Williams in space, who knows? It's advantage to that guy at this point. It really feels like so.
Yep.
Tennessee cannot go play. To your point earlier, they cannot go play like they did against Florida, like they did against Arkansas, or like they did against Oklahoma, and win this game. They're going to have to go out there and play with some confidence. They're going to have to believe that they're going to make plays. I mean, they can't play tight. They can't press. Some things that I feel like we've seen from this offense in the last couple of weeks. It's got to be a different mentality going out there. And I know this team has championship hopes, but you can't go into this game thinking about any of that. Like, none of that matters right now. Even if you win this game, none of that matters. Like, you still have all these, you still got Kentucky and Georgia and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt that you got to get through. There's a lot of season left, even if you do win this game. You got to make it about beating Alabama. And I don't know. I don't really know what to expect. I think my gut says that Tennessee doesn't win this game just because of what I've seen the past 3 weeks. And I'm almost to the point where, yes, I do think like I said earlier, I do think this offense can start clicking at any time. But, you gotta see it against an SEC team to believe it. So I think it would be foolish to say, oh, yeah, well, this is the week that they're going to come out and score 50 points against another SEC team. We just haven't seen that yet.
No.
And they didn't play great competition early in the season. NC State's terrible. Real bad. We know Kent State's bad. Obviously, Chattanooga is not good. Oklahoma's not looking that great either after getting blown out by Texas. Florida's 3-3. They're not great either. So, I don't know how good Alabama really is yet. And we'll have to wait to the end of the season to really know for sure. But as of right now, I'm not feeling very positive about it.
I do hope that the coaching is a factor, because Bama with Saban always had that air of, yeah, we might be ahead, we might be close, but this is Saban. There's going to come a moment in this game where he's going to shut the door on us. And there was just always that feeling with him. And he just had that killer edge. I mean, it's what made him frankly, I always hate saying this, but it is true. It's what made him the greatest of all time. I mean, he's the greatest college football coach that we'll probably ever see. And there was just always that element hanging out there. That's gone. Thank God. And clearly, DeBoer, I think he's shown here that if he's going to have it, I don't think he has that yet. And I mean, you can just see the advantage that can give you. Like, Billy Napier in this game against Florida pissed that game away. At the half with the 12 men on the field. I mean, what are you doing, son? Come on.
I don't think it's the first time they've had issues like that either.
Apparently not.
They've had like guys in the same number uniforms, and you heard that. I think you heard that at some point in the second half. They had guys like switching jerseys to get on the field.
Ridiculous.
Special team situations.
Well, and not going for two at the end of the game. What are you thinking? Freaking go for two. Are you stupid?
I was like, yes, this is great because
yes, advantage Tennessee. I mean, you are in our building going to overtime. And Tennessee finally got hot in that second half on offense, relatively speaking.
Clearly, he did not watch college basketball growing up, and he would understand that you go for the win on the road mentality.
Exactly. And so coaching can be just such a huge thing. Now, I think DeBoer coached his way to a national championship last year. I think he'd go for two, given the option.
I think he's a much better coach. I don't think it's anywhere in question.
He's not Sunbelt Billy, but I think there's something to be said there that this is not Saban. Also, I think Jalen Milroe is what is the right word? He is gettable.
He's a wild
In
card.
that, yeah, when he's locked in, he'll beat Georgia. When he's off the tracks, he is like off the tracks. He is a mistake machine. I mean, what did he do against South Carolina? Threw a horrific interception. Was there fumbles too? I had the box score up here. Let's see. Fumbles. He didn't lose a fumble, but he had 2 interceptions. Yeah, I mean, he can be incredibly athletic, extend plays with his legs. I mean, he is seriously fast and elusive, but at the same time, I mean, he will make mistakes if you let him. And that's a huge factor. And then Alabama's defense, I think, is very gettable. They have shown that they are suspect. And I think and Alabama's offensive line to whatever extent. I mean, let's see, South Carolina, again, I have this up. South Carolina had 4 sacks in that game against Alabama. So you can shake Milroe and have that kid seeing ghosts, and that's you're golden there. And I think they're still going to put up points just because of how athletic he is, and Ryan Williams and just the weapons they have. Jeremy Bernard. I mean, Bernard was the guy that came through for him against South Carolina. Like, they just got guys. But it's going to come down to the offense, I think. Like, that's just my assessment of this game. This is probably going to be the case for the rest of the season. It's going to come down to Tennessee has an elite defense. Can the offense score? That's just going to be the key, because I think Milroe will be shaken at least for a portion of this game, probably at the beginning, and maybe he'll settle in later. That's what happened to Bryce Young. He was completely shaken at the beginning of that 22 game, and then he got it together and had one of the best games of his career. And so I would expect that you're not just going to get crap play out of Milroe the entire time. So you have to get this defense. You have to score. And I'm not Joey Halsley. Thank God. I don't envy his position, but you got to do something to score. And can they do it? I keep flip-flopping in my mind. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes down to executing. I think there's going to be plays there because, like you said, I think this Alabama defense can be gettable, but they got to go out there and execute. They can't play with the same mindset. They got to have a little bit of swagger about them. They got to go in there believing they're going to win this game. It helps that it's at home, obviously. You need Neyland to be loud, and coming off of a win against Florida, by all means, it should be. This team's 5-1. Midpoint of the season, everything's right there in front of you. They got to show up. The fans, the team's got to come out there ready to execute. But I think Alabama, they're looking to bounce back too. You come off, they're on the same path right now as Tennessee almost. They got that win against Georgia, but then you got that loss to Vanderbilt, and then you don't really bounce back against South Carolina at home. You struggle a bit. You could have easily lost that game. They got a lot to prove too. So it's not like all the pressure's on Tennessee here. I mean, I think there's just as much pressure on Alabama, and being at home clearly gives Tennessee, that advantage. But I still, I've seen Alabama execute at a high level against really good competition. I haven't seen Tennessee do it yet. And right now that's logically, objectively, if I'm not going with what I hope happens or what I think can happen, just going off of what we've seen, I think you have to go with Alabama. And
fair point.
I think I'd probably take them. I don't know if you want to get in scores yet, but
go ahead.
I think I would. I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means. I think Tennessee can stay right with them. I think Tennessee's defense will make some plays, but I think it'll be something like 31-24 Alabama.
31-24. I very much in the realm of possibility. I think that's a very real thing. I like this comment from Ethan. He said, Milroe is not a great QB. He's a great athlete. Keep him contained and make him throw to win. Yes, 100%. And then Mr. Jones says, our defense has answered every challenge so far. I think it's sort of a combination of those two things. That's how Tennessee wins.
Yeah.
At least wins defensively. I think they will force Milroe into mistakes. He will be shaken, and they will open that door for Tennessee in this game. I just think that's going to happen. Milroe is not Bryce Young. And I don't know if he's going to come in and have a generational game, kind of like Bryce Young did in that one, in a loss, thank God. But I just think that they'll have the ability to get to Milroe. And so it comes down to Tennessee's offense. And I think this is the week that they show enough pride to really get it done. But I don't think they're going to blow the doors off of anything. Like, it's not going to be a 50-point game. But I do think you have to score 30. That is kind of the entire game here to me. I just think that's the number you have to hit. I mean, what was the final score? They scored 27 on South Carolina. South Carolina, very formidable defense. They got some real dudes.
They have some good they have some pass rushers for sure.
They really do. And pound for pound, I mean, it's hard to say, whose defense as a whole is better between Tennessee and South Carolina. I would lean Tennessee for sure. But they gave up 27. So I'll say Tennessee does win. It's gonna be. I brought this term up with Crompton on the post game. It's Dickie V, Dick Vitale. I think it's gonna be a Maylock smasher. It's get your heart medicine ready.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's gonna be an intense game that comes right down to it, right down to the end where you are just hanging on for dear life. But I think you can get to their secondary, and if Nico will just make the throws, my man. Just make them. And instead of overthrowing, land it in the breadbasket, and you will win this football game. I think it is almost that simple. Make the plays, because if Halsey will leave the playbook open and continue to be a little more inventive and not so milquetoast and predictable, and Nico will just make the throws. This is the game where you can separate yourself into, okay, Tennessee is ready to be a playoff team. And it's perfect that it's in Neyland. That's great. But like I saw people saying that. I mean, there's even people in the comments of this who are Tennessee fans that are just like, oh, Alabama's going to do this and do that. What evidence have you seen that they lost to Vanderbilt? What are you talking about? I couldn't believe that those were some of the responses. They lost to Vanderbilt and then nearly lost to South Carolina. That went over Georgia. Hey, that's great. Magical moment in Tuscaloosa. Ryan Williams is carrying you to a win in that one. I mean, just throwing up 50-50 balls this kid, and he's making miracle plays. Like, that's what it took to win. Okay, that's one thing. They lost to Vanderbilt. Like, and it's not that Vanderbilt stinks. They got a real football team. They kicked Kentucky's butt for sure.
They also lost to Georgia State.
Exactly. Vanderbilt lost to Georgia State and Missouri. And Missouri got just drug up and down the field by Texas A&M. I mean, Vanderbilt is not, despite what we've seen, they're not, a world killer here. And Alabama lost to them. Like, do not come in here and be like, Alabama's going to come in and just take Tennessee to the woodshed. How what you've seen, how would it prove that out? So, frankly, it's in Neyland. Milroe is shakeable. And I think Tennessee will get to him very effectively. And so Nico just make the throws. And I think he will make enough. It's what he did against Oklahoma. And in that one, obviously, it went super conservative and you had the lead. But he made, that awesome throw over the middle to Thornton. And that was enough. Like, he did enough. I think he'll do enough here. So I'll say 33-30. An odd score. You get to like 23, then you score a touchdown, then you win on a field goal. Something like that. Yeah. That
would definitely be one for the heart medicine then, if that ends up being the case. That's the Florida game.
I think they can put it together. Defense is just really special. And I just think that they're gonna get to Milroe. And I don't know how it seems like some Alabama fans have found us here.
Yeah.
Don't act like you lost to Vanderbilt. You know what Tennessee hasn't done in however long? Lost to Vanderbilt. I'm sorry. They might do it later this season. But that's come on.
I'll say one thing with Alabama that I think is interesting. And even though I picked them to win this game, I do think there's going to come a point where, DeBoer is not Saban. Obviously, we know that. But I don't just mean that he's not going to have the same, he's not going to have 7 championships like Saban. His culture is very different from Saban. And I think right now Alabama's stuck in this kind of weird, they want to keep the Alabama way that Saban created. They want that to be a thing, but then that's just not 100% who DeBoer is. He needs to have his own culture that he had at Washington to be the best version of himself as a head coach. Trying to carry on what works at Alabama that's not who he needs to be. And I think at some point that's going to come to a head. Maybe it already is to some extent. We've seen the outburst from Malachi Moore at the end of the Vanderbilt game, and then this rough performance against South Carolina in that response. I don't know. I feel like, and that's not downing DeBoer as a coach. I just don't think it would be fair to anyone to say you need to do it this way. He needs to go be his own guy, what works for him, create his own unique culture in Tuscaloosa, not what worked for Saban. And I think that's when, maybe they take off under DeBoer, and maybe that never happens. I don't know. That's kind of my feel on it. For Tennessee's sake, Tennessee should hope that comes to a head, this weekend. That would certainly make the game a lot easier.
People are having a conversation. The Bama fan was on Facebook, I think. It was, let me see. Oh no, it's on Instagram. Maybe this guy right here. They're like, "Where's the Bama fan?" I feel like this guy's a Bama fan. Maybe it's an odd thing for a Tennessee fan to say.
Yeah,
I mean, Smitty here. He said, "I'm in over my head." I mean, whatever. You can think whatever you want. I don't know. I don't really care what you think about my opinion. I've just seen what I've seen from Alabama, and I just think that they're. What have you seen that is? Oh, they're going to come in and smash Tennessee. Says who? What? What have you seen? Tennessee's defense is elite, and it is in Neyland Stadium. I mean, these things. This is the math here. I mean, what do you want? I don't know. Zach's outcome is very real, very possible, and so is mine. What? I don't know. Oh, and Mike says he's a Bama fan. So I don't know why Bama fans are watching this show, but fair enough. I'll take all the views that we can get. So I think that's that. Anything else for the folks at home, Zach, before we bounce out of here?
No, we'll see another nerve-wracking Saturday in the SEC. That's life in college football. I don't know. We love this sport so much, just so every Saturday we can go straight into panic mode as soon as the first series doesn't go your way or something. I'm sure it'll be 4 hours of that on Saturday.
Everybody can talk a big game. I could come on here and say, like Mr. Jones, Vols by 50. But when the game actually starts and the first play that goes wrong, just we're done.
Yep.
Dang it. Season is over. Can't believe I ever believed in this.
Yep. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yep. It is what it is. All right. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, thanks so much to everybody for watching. We could not do it without you. And as always, I mean that very literally. So thank you for tuning in. All right. There is going to be a midweek segment. We're going to have our channel partner here, Lucas Panziki, is going to join me for a segment a little later this week. If everything works out, hasn't been recorded yet or anything. But if everything works out, we're going to have a segment with him later this week. And so look out for that on the A to Z Sports Tennessee Vols channel. And yeah, I think that is it. Look out for that. Subscribe, yada, yada. And we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.